Welcome to Beyond the Qubit. I'm your host, Frank Dekker. Today we interview Matthias Kaiser, CEO of Pex Machina. What's fascinating about Pex Machina is they develop quantum simulation for precision medicine for oncology. And what I really like about Matthias is that Matthias has sales experience and he really wants to solve customers' problems. So he is not only focusing on finding a solution for quantum computers. No, he really wants to solve problems with quantum simulation. And maybe quantum simulation is not as technical as a quantum computer. I think it's really an interesting area to dive into. One of the things that we lack with quantum computing is real-world applications. And what I would love to learn today and from the interview is how does Matthias see the opportunity for applications in precision medicine. Before we start with the show, I have an important disclaimer. I do not represent any company here, and I do it under my own name. Let's get started. Welcome, Matthias. Thank you for joining the podcast. I'm glad you're here. Can you start with sharing your journey? What brought you from physics and to a quantum background into precision oncology?
Okay, yeah, Frank. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here. I'm very happy to participate today in the podcast. Short introduction about myself. So I'm a physicist by training. Like basically, I guess everybody in quantum, or at least it's whether a computational chemist or it is a physicist in most cases. So I'm one of them. I actually started to study that physics in Frankfurt, high energy physics, but I was reading actually some books. It was namely the books of Anton Zeilinger, his two books. I'm not sure now what the English names of the books are, so I will not try. But I was reading them, but we didn't have like any courses in Frankfurt at the time. We had one like tiny course, so I decided to go for internship actually with Anton Zeilinger at the time. So I went to Vienna in my summer holidays and was working there on a quantum eraser experiment at the time. Was super interesting. I think scientifically it was not that great or that big, but it was very cool because we were actually doing optical devices. We were implementing a quantum eraser experiment, which was pretty cool.
And for my understanding, Matthias, what is a quantum eraser? I'm not familiar with that.
Quantum erasers. I have to dig out my little knowledge that I still have of that. Basically, what it does, it erases information by measuring or not measuring. So you basically have like two paths and you basically make a double slit experiment. In the end, it boils down to a double slit experiment, and you can basically change if you get interference patterns or not by changing something in one of the paths of the light. So you separate the light in two passes, then you change on one side something, whatever it may be, frequency, an offset in the wave to basically tune if you have interference or not. And there are ways how you can do that kind of after the fact. It points towards the idea of quantum information theory, right? That the effects of quantum mechanics are basically an information theoretical thing and not some kind of philosophical thing. I mean, this is the basis of quantum information is basically that you can look at quantum systems or basically everything in the end as an information theoretical system. So that takes a little bit like this kind of philosophical view on quantum mechanics it was for a long time. I think it's a very practical approach to quantum mechanics, right? Before everybody was like many worlds or how is that hidden variables, and everybody was thinking like how they can solve quantum mechanics like logically for us, like that we feel good about quantum mechanics, and quantum information theory is a much more practical approach where we say like, okay, it's like we don't know what the philosophical underlying story is, but we look at it as an information system, right? Information goes in, information comes out, and we try to understand what's happening in between and how these things evolved, right? Like quantum cryptography, quantum computing. It seems it's a good way at looking at it. At least it's a very efficient way of looking at it because it has brought a lot of like technological advances. So I would
So
say
maybe to
makes it
summarize,
strong.
Matthias. So you had read 2 books, and then you decided to do a summer internship to work
Yes,
on
yes,
the quantum eraser. And how did that progress further? So how did you end up with precision
yes.
Oncology?
Yes, I mean
What
we're still
triggered your
far away
interest?
from that, right? We're still far away from it. So basically, I decided then to move to Vienna and do my master's in quantum information theory, which I also did. Um, at the time, I was already quite early done with all of my courses in studying there. So I thought I do a Erasmus semester, and this is also what I did. And I went to Latvia, and I really liked it there. I get good contacts. Met actually my now wife over there, and she came also back to Austria. She had booked it already uh, before we knew that we would come together. Her Erasmus in Austria. So and after my studies, I kind of didn't want to stay in academia. I did a very theoretical thing for my master's thesis, which is probably the reason it was. Yeah, it was not mine, let's say like this. And I realized this and didn't want to stay in academia. So I was thinking to do my PhD, but then I decided no, I want actually to go into the industry and see what's happening there. So yeah, so actually I moved to Latvia at the time through a professor I knew there. I got an offer of a company to work for them. And the funny thing was when I came there to the CEO of the company, we had the discussion. He offered me the job, and he said, like, I have 2 jobs openings for you. One is as an engineer, a physicist, and this would be your salary. And I have another position, which is more like a sales business development position, and this would be your salary. And yeah, from this day, I was working in sales and business development. Unfortunately, in Latvia, it's not like this, right? Usually, like in Germany or other countries, it's usually like this that engineers and physicists have quite good salaries. Unfortunately, this was not in Latvia. So I chose the path of this, which was really cool because it was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot, different things, right? In physics, when you study, you're more focused on the scientific beauty of stuff,
Yeah.
which doesn't matter in business that much, at least. I mean, it brings you a little bit, right? A nice story brings you somewhere, but in the end, people want to see results, want to have benefit of what you're doing, and this is what I actually learned during this time. So it was very valuable for what I'm doing now to have this experience, right? To work with customers together, understand how they think, what they need, how to engage with them, like how to understand even their wants and needs, because sometimes what they say they want, they need is not actually what they want or need. And that's
I
that's
think it's a very
unfortunate truth.
powerful combination that if you have a scientific background, that you also do some sales experience as a CEO. Because
Yes, yes.
that's a different skill set, and I think it's complementary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's it's very tough in the beginning because it's really 2 different worlds. But I think it is very helpful, especially when you want to start your own business, because in the beginning you cannot hire just a sales team and outsource that. That's not possible if you start off, and probably it's also not a good idea. So there are many books who describe that actually the founder team should also do sales, not because they're the best person to do sales, but because you learn a lot, right? If you talk with a customer, the best feedback that you can get is their hard-earned money, because if they pay for what you have, you probably at least not on a too bad way. So this is, and this is a lot to learn, right? You will hear a lot of no's, you will hear a lot of like, but maybe if you could do this, this would be interesting. And then you have to figure out what you do with this. And this is, I think, the most important, that it's not always necessary to have the best people from the beginning in sales, but to have the people who actually founded the company and run the company in sales, because that's the people who should learn their lesson, right? Because otherwise you end up with building something, that is completely off the market and nobody wants. And this is the worst thing that can happen to a startup, that everybody thinks it's so cool, that you drank your own Kool-Aid and the thing is so cool what you're doing, but the customer disagrees. That's the worst thing that can happen.
And Matthias, so you did the internship,
yeah,
and then you ended up in sales. And when did your interest for oncology? When did
my interest for oncology, that's actually it's still far away from the story, because the interest of oncology, actually, I had always I was working in my first job, and we had a lot of business in nuclear medicine. This was one of the areas that the company was working on, so I had already some touching points with oncology, actually, but it was never like that it would have never like a career in oncology that I have wanted to pursue or something like this. It's more that it found me. I'll come to this in a second, why it came to me. It's not, it was, let's say, like 5 years back, I would have never thought that I would end up in precision oncology, to be very honest. Actually, let's say like this, to continue the historic genesis
Yes,
of
please.
everything. Basically, in Latvia, I worked then for different companies in deep tech, mostly sales, business development, always big projects, often multi-million projects we were doing. First job was actually I told already, in a nuclear equipment company, working also with the United Nations, for example, and this was my account. So we did a lot of business with big customers. And this was very interesting because you learned a lot that sometimes what companies want or organizations want is not what the people want to work in these organizations. There's often a difference, which is also important for sales, right? Because not always what is good for the company you're talking with is good for the person you're talking with in the company, and the other way
The
around.
decision maker.
Yes, exactly. So this is something that you really have to learn, because it's quite dangerous, especially in the beginning when you come from academia. Especially, it sounds like very easy. You go out and you write a couple of people and then you sell something, but it's not. It's actually very much harder, because there's a lot of like corporate games and like politics and stuff like this involved, which is very hard to look through in the beginning. But this I learned very good during the time. I learned it the hard way, basically. And then I got actually scouted at the time by somebody from the Ministry of Economics in Latvia. They have a really cool program, which I still think is a good idea, that basically they scout working groups from academia. And they give them a little bit money, 50,000 euros, I think it was at the time, to hire a business developer. So what that means is they take somebody from the industry that works part-time with a team to take one of their inventions and commercialize it. And I was basically scouted for this, to do this for one team, and support them in business development, and basically it was a machine learning algorithm, and we try to commercialize it, find a business model, find customers, what to do with it, stuff like this. This then later led to us, the people involved in this project, founding a company, which I was leading as a CEO. We were doing this in the end, what we did was we tried to apply like machine learning on different kind of industrial problems, but we never managed to actually build a scalable product in the end. This was the problem. I mean, there were many other problems, like in any startup, but I think the main problem was that we never managed to build a scalable product. And the issue there is, I think that which is also important for what I'm doing now, is that we actually came from the technology side, right? We had experience and knowledge in machine learning, and we really badly wanted to apply this knowledge of machine learning in an industry. I didn't know it at that time, but I think it's a bad idea. It's a really bad idea, because you see everything out of the scope of that technology, and then you get blind for what people actually need, right? Like, sometimes the solutions that people have are working and are much less high tech than you want it to be, and usually also much cheaper than you want it to be. So it's like really tough for a startup to compete if you're coming from a technology side, because you want really badly to apply that to some problems where it doesn't maybe really fit. And then additionally, also, you never know if you're not pushing it through. So if you have like different options, you end up with a situation that you develop one product, or you start to develop a product for one option. You talk with customers, you do some projects, you figure out there's now a roadblock. It's like it gets difficult. So there's this other stuff which we once heard of. Maybe we do this. This sounds like easier than this. And you basically end up always doing all different kind of other things. And, the grass is always greener on the other side, which is really bad for a startup. I didn't know it at the time, right? You want to get the right market, but I think it's actually not a good way of doing this. And this I realized when after my first startup failed, I joined the quantum community. I joined first Anacor. It was then later sold to Qubit Quantum. And I basically learned that the whole quantum community is operating like this, right? Really badly want to apply quantum computer on some kind of problem. And I already know that this is not working. This is not how things are usually working. And this was the idea to basically found a company that does one thing, very niche, but very good, and develops a solution for that to the end, right? Not just stop when it goes out of the technology. Because out of my experience, and I think many people who have run successful startups, you can read all the biographies, usually the hard stuff is not like applying a technology. It's everything around. It's like business model. It's how you connect it to existing workflows. What other software is already there that you might have to connect to, or like where you get information from or have to give information to. Do you overlap with some of that, right? Do you want to overlap with that, or better not? There's a lot of like questions that you have to solve that are not trivial at all. I mean, quantum computing is not trivial. That is very clear from a technological perspective, but finding a good business model is also not trivial. And I think sometimes in the industry that part is taken too lightly, because yes, like if we would have tomorrow quantum advantage, I think the industry would say like, oh, now all the customer come running because we have quantum advantage and we have this great algorithm and this great machine and we can do whatever. The truth is they would not, because there is no solution. There is no solution what they should do with it, right? Why they should even come. There's no proof that, even if we mathematically can prove that we can do one calculation faster or better than a classical computer, that doesn't mean that there's value in this for the customer.
And to your point, I think I'm fascinated by the CEO of NVIDIA and his statement on AI. He said, if you have the lowest unit of compute, smart developers and researchers will create new algorithms and they will build new applications. So I think, yes, you might be right initially, but I think if the hardware improves and if let's say we reach 100 logical qubits, I think by then it's proven that quantum can be the next tectonic shift in compute.
Oh, yeah.
And then at 2000 logical qubits, I think it could go mass market.
No, what I want to say is not that technical advancements in quantum computing are not important. They are really important, but it's not the only thing. Because like that quote which you just had, like, omits the part that somebody has to be these clever developers.
Yeah.
This is not like, it's not happening by itself, right?
No.
This is it's not like, okay, we put the machine there and then magically all the applications appear.
No, and I think it's also the same with AI at the moment. You see a delay between, for example, the AI agents and the companies. Because, yes, consumer applying AI, maybe they're comfortable with a 5 or 10% error rate, but enterprises cannot live with 5 to 10% error rate.
It depends on the enterprise, right? I mean, this is again the thing, right? Like, you have to really, really, really understand what people do and how they do it to basically bring value to them. Because, like, you cannot generalize that, right? There might be, so in AI, there are applications where they can live with like quite high error rates. I mean, the financial industry can live with some of the applications that have actually with quite high error rates, because they just need to be right more than 50% of the time, right? For some applications, which is fine for them, which is probably not fine if you're producing cars, for example. Your machine learning algorithm should maybe be more times right than just 51%.
And is it correct, Matthias, that you said is because of your previous experience? That's why you said, okay, I want to focus really on the solution. I want
Yes.
to, yeah, I want to solve problems.
Yes. We don't want to push, like the idea behind Pex Machina is that we don't want to push a technology. We know that the problem that we are solving is a problem that can be solved with quantum computing. We know that for sure. We know also that it can be solved good with quantum computer, better than the state of the art. But it is not the aim to push it on the market, to push quantum computing. It's not the aim. It's build a solution that uses quantum computing. Does the customer really have to care about? I don't think so. I mean, currently, of course, early like the innovators which are interested in what we're doing, of course, also that's also people who like the quantum computing part of it, and it's definitely part of the story. But it should not be the most important. The most important part for customers, even though they like the quantum story, is still ROI. Return of investment is, like even if you're like a
that
like
is sound, the words ROI, that is music in this that sounds like music to my ears.
Yeah, because I mean it's clear, even if you're interested in, like, companies are commercial organizations. They want to earn money, right? This is the only purpose why companies exist, is to earn money. There's a lot of other things that are around that are necessary to do that, and to keep people happy, to keep the environment good, and keep society functional. But the main purpose of a company is to earn money. That
But
means
Matthias,
when you
I
come.
want to go a little bit back. We spent already quite some time on the intro, but
Yeah, sorry.
what I want to have sharp is, can you explain your steps and why you got interested in precision oncology? Can you maybe explain how you became the CEO of Pex Machina?
Yes, I can do that. Basically, I had the idea to basically build a company with that is actually forming a solution. And during my time at Kipu, I met one of my co-founders, which is Valentin.
And maybe for the audience that doesn't know Kipu, what does it stand for?
Oh, Kipu Quantum is a startup developing a quantum algorithm for NISQ machines. So this is basically what Kipu Quantum is doing, mainly active in optimization, quantum machine learning, a bit in quantum chemistry, but currently focuses more on quantum machine learning and quantum optimization. Yes.
And how do they compare with other programming languages like Qiskit or Classic? So
Oh,
my
it's not a
previous
programming
interview was
language.
with.
It's a company that develops algorithms, usually
Okay.
based on one of the languages, right? It's usually like a Qiskit based solution. Could be also something else, but it's basically algorithms. It's what how they call it is hardware software co-design. So that means basically that they develop algorithms which are developed having the hardware in mind. So they basically
Okay.
try to tickle the last bit out of NISQ quantum computers by making the algorithm more specific to the hardware. This is basically what they're doing. The aim there is to basically develop solutions that run with an advantage already right now on NISQ quantum computers. That's the
Okay.
general idea.
Thank you for clarifying. That's clear.
Very good. So yeah, and I was joining. So I told already I joined in the beginning Anacor as a business development manager. Anacor then was sold to Kipu Quantum after a year that I was there, and then I joined Kipu Quantum as a account executive. And yeah, we had a lot of like customer interactions also together with Valentin, because Valentin was in the development team, so his task was to translate quantum algorithms into like software, right? It's not, this is what I said before, that an algorithm is not a product. An algorithm is an algorithm, and the product is using algorithms, but this is not the same. Or in very rare cases, it's the same. Maybe you could argue that in the case of Gurobi, for example, the algorithm is is the product. However, even there, I would argue that probably all of the stuff around is as at least as important as the algorithm itself that they're using. So there's a lot to it, right? So this was basically his task. So we had a lot of like customer interactions, talking with people, and we realized that we have very similar ideas about that. That like this trying, like pinging customers, and trying to convince them to do quantum. That this is not a good way of doing it, right? Because customers are generally are not interested in quantum. This is just very harsh, but that's the truth. They're as much interested in quantum as you are in which belt your engine is working on in your car. So that's the amount. There are some people, of course, like there are also in cars people who love their cars and who know every screw that goes into their engine. There are people like this around in the industry as well, but this is not like the general like I don't need to know and I don't want to know how my engine exactly works to drive the car. And the same thing is with quantum. People generally don't care about quantum. They care about the value that it brings. And this is something that we have not yet shown really as an industry to the customer, that there is actual value. There's a promise of value, but there is not yet a value. And I think this is a general problem because you just sell on, I mean, you sell for some while on FOMO, but at some point, people want to see real results. And we are at the point, in my opinion. And that's why the industry in general, I think, is asked to show something for, right? To show real solutions. And this was the idea behind what we wanted to do, not to promise some kind of value in 10 years from now, but actually deliver immediate value to customers. This is the general idea.
And okay, that's clear. So you were at Kipu together with your CTO Valentin, and then how did you become the CEO? What happened that you said, okay, let's start for myself?
So it was actually it was a coincidence, let's say like this. Actually reconnected with a contact I had from my previous company. So I told already we did machine learning applications, and we were actually founded in COVID. The company was founded, I think, in like October of 2019. So a couple of months before, or a couple of weeks actually before COVID started. And we were fully in COVID. So the first like we had applications of our algorithms in additive manufacturing. This was good, but basically the industry, like there was nobody even to call when COVID started because everybody was moving into home offices and stuff like this. So we were kind of figuring out what to do, and the obvious thing was to apply that what we're doing on the vaccine manufacturing process. So we actually looked into how we can use our algorithm to optimize bioreactors at the time. And we were participating in EU versus virus, a big hackathon. We actually won in one of the categories. And out of this, we, of course, got a lot of contacts, talked with a lot of people, and I got introduced to Johnson & Johnson, to somebody there. And we still stayed in contact all the time. And turned also out that he's very interested in quantum computing. And we reconnected maybe now it's like a year ago or something like this. And we had a little bit discussion, and he said like, oh, I have a colleague that is currently thinking to leave the company or to do something else. You should talk with him. He's very interested in new technologies in quantum computing, and he wants us to do something impactful and meaningful. And okay, so we set up a call, we talked with each other, and had then over a longer period, on and off, a couple of discussions, like just like friendly exchange. He wanted to know about quantum computers, I wanted to know more about what he is doing, and at some point then he said like, okay, I'm now planning actually to leave the company. Let's like what can we do? And then we came up with then we understood actually at this point already through the discussions that there is something that we can do in quantum with quantum computing in the field of oncology. He was actually working in technology for oncology and immunology. He was senior director before at Johnson & Johnson. So he had a very good broad overview over the field, not just the technologies that are used, but also like the general like strategy, first of all, but also like the structure within the company and in the industry. So this was very, very interesting to understand that. And that was basically the puzzle piece that was kind of missing. So we decided that we discussed in the beginning a lot of different options, but we basically settled on the precision oncology part. First of all, because it's impactful. I mean that is what a technology should bring, right? It should solve something impactful, real good that can bring, right? It's like if there are better cancer treatments, that's immense value to society and especially to cancer patients, right? It's not just survival, it's also quality of life. Like traditional methods like chemotherapy doing a horrible job, maybe they can save some lives, but they do a horrible job on the quality of life side of patients. So there is a lot that can be done. It's one of the biggest problems that we're currently having. I was even not aware before like how common cancer actually is.
Yeah.
There's actually a study by the World Health Organization that says like I think 1 in 3 people or 1 in 5, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like very shocking, gets cancer during their lifetime. So it's like not that it's and there's a big portion, and the older the society gets, right, the longer we live, the better other medicine parts get, the longer we live from that, the more likely it is actually that we will die from cancer. So it's actually a real problem that society has, and there's also a real problem that the industry has, because cancer treatments are very, very complex, because you have a lot of different cancer types that react very differently in different patients. So the standard like treatment of chemotherapy, for example, it's not a standard treatment. It's like they make cocktails of different compounds for each patient, and they do it basically by trial and error. So they inject the patient something, and then they realize, okay, it doesn't really work, it does more harm than it does good. So they change actually the compound. So it's not really like that they have, it's not like a flu, right? Where you drink your Vicmedinide and you will be fine at some point. It's different. It's really different, and there is no one treatment that would solve all of this. So it's actually a much more complex problem than many of the other illnesses that are around. So it was clear that this is a very impactful work that we could do. But moreover, it's also a part where when you look on the side of the technology or of the compounds used, it's actually quite interesting what can be done using quantum computing there. So this was also important. We looked from it from an impact perspective, but we looked also from technological capability perspective on the field.
Can you describe Pex Machina in simple terms to somebody who is not familiar with oncology?
Yes. So what we basically do is we help develop compounds for oncology drugs, right? For medicine that helps with that beats cancer. Basically, this is what we're doing. We're doing this by applying quantum simulations, basically. So there's a lot of fields where well, let's put it differently. There are companies who are already doing this, like Schrödinger, for example, but they're using algorithms that in some cases are not doing too well. This is just the problem of the industry. And there's a lot of cases where it didn't went very, very, very well. There's, for example, a case of AbbVie that basically lost 6 billion with a B in front, US dollars, by buying a company and wanted to commercialize a specific cancer drug, and they basically failed in clinical trials. A lot of that could have been avoided if they would have done simulations before, but it's not standard in the industry. There's many reasons why this is not standard in the industry.
Okay.
I will not go more into detail
Please.
at this point, but yes.
Matthias, can you explain why quantum simulation is uniquely positioned to solve problems in oncology?
It's not uniquely positioned to solve problems in oncology. It can solve a lot of problems, but we're coming back to right. So it's not just oncology. It's a lot of problems in pharmaceutical industry. It's a lot of problems in material science, chemistry, and many other places, right? The thing is, it's again about focus, right? This is for us. And it's about bringing a solution that makes sense. And why it makes sense is there's a lot of places where quantum mechanical interactions are important in pharmaceutical development. However, methods of doing these simulations are not very good in quantum mechanical systems. This is
And why is
basically,
that?
it's precision, basically. It's precision. The most methods that are used today were built for classical computers, and these methods are not very good or scaling very, very badly in system size when you want to apply them, which means basically that, to be very honest, simulation is not a tool that the pharmaceutical industry is relying on today. It is seen as a helper, as a supporting tool, but it's nothing that people would rely on just because it's not precise enough. This is actually the issue there. I mean, they heavily rely on experimentation with all of the nasty things that come with it, right? Like in what you experiment and stuff like this, right? It's then you have clinical trials where if your medication is not properly selected or built, you can even do harm in humans. So there's a lot of issues doing these experiments. Like a lot of also I would say unpleasant questions that can be asked in this direction, which is fine. Like if you treat an illness that is very severe, there is always risk, right? That the treatment that I mean, if you're taking I don't know, ibuprofen or something like this, right, painkiller for your headache, there are side effects of that, but the side effects are considered quite low compared to the value that it brings you, right? If you take it every day, probably, and a lot of that, of course, it's a different story. But if you take it once in a while to treat your headache, the likelihood of you getting any of the side effects are very small. However, the stronger the illness gets, the stronger also the side effects that are still considered as fine are getting. Because if the result of the illness is death, everything that doesn't lead to death is an improvement upon your illness. So you would actually allow more necessary side effects, like you see in chemotherapy. Chemotherapy has horrible side effects, right? You would never treat any other illness with a pharmaceutical like chemotherapy, because it's just like basically kills your body, right? This is how chemotherapy works. You inject somebody with a poison that basically kills all cells in the human. Just it kills fast multiplying cells faster than slow multiplying cells. That's why also people who get chemotherapy lose their hair, because the cells that produce the hair are fast multiplying cells, so they're also attacked by the chemotherapy. But in the end, it is like this, that it's basically a race between killing the patient and killing the cancer. It's actually quite serious situation. Basically, chemotherapy means you're slowly killing the patient. You're just hoping that it kills the cancer faster than it kills the patient. This is basically what it is. And there's a lot which you can actually do, where you can really, really apply simulation to make this part better, to make better medications that avoid these side effects, that actually resolve, that can maybe not fully cure, but at least like partially cure, or at least like bring much longer lifetime to patients, and avoid much of the side effects, right? Because what life is it if you're living, but you have to go constant through chemotherapy where you basically can do nothing while you're doing it, right? It's basically you're trading a couple of months for which you cannot really use anymore. So it's a really bad trade-off that you have there. And this is I think the biggest leverage that you can apply a quantum simulation to, because you can make really a difference in the life of these patients.
Matthias, can you explain why quantum simulation is so much better? So what is possible with quantum simulation that is not possible with classical computing?
Yes. I will not go here into detail, but what I can say is that quantum simulation is not inherently better than other simulation. It's not. It's not for everything. You cannot say like, I take whatever and I throw it the quantum simulation and it will give a better result. It's not like this. There are very, very specific applications where quantum simulations have a benefit over traditional methods. And traditional methods are good. I mean, they're like their DFT methods, for example, that do great. There are many companies who earn a lot of money and can show huge benefit using these technologies, right? But there are certain areas where they're not really good. And this is the areas where we are going, right? Where basically you can apply a technology that solves a problem that they have, but that cannot be solved with current technology. I will not go more into detail because that tells too much, but this is where we go.
Let me take a step back. So what exactly is quantum simulation? Can you explain it in basic terms for the audience? And what does quantum mean?
Yes, okay, there are many ways how you can explain quantum simulations, also many things, right? I mean, it depends on what you call quantum simulations. I mean, there's quantum Monte Carlo, you can do linear equation systems you can solve, so you can do like finite element simulations theoretically. With quantum computing, you could all call that quantum simulation, but what I mean is actually the simulation of quantum systems. That doesn't necessarily be done with quantum computers. It can be done with quantum computers, but it doesn't have to be necessarily be done. The benefit there is that you're basically, if you're using a quantum computer, the big benefit is there that you're simulating one quantum system with another quantum system, which is
solve
great.
Quantum mechanical problems with quantum mechanica, which is
makes a lot of. I mean, like Feynman. I mean, Feynman basically said that this is the reason why quantum computers should be built in the first place, right? So this is, I think, the biggest application. If it's, and I think it's an impactful application, right? That's why many companies work on this, right? Material science, it's chemistry, it's pharma. There's a lot of like big technologies that will in the future rely on that are meaningful for our society. So I think it's a good place to start. I know that there are companies who have other theses where the first quantum advantage will be. However, they might be right from a purely technical perspective. I don't think that they're right from a commercial perspective.
Why is that?
Because, so if you, for example, do optimization, most optimization problems are quite good solved, right? Like for example, when I started in the quantum industry, there was this story everybody was telling was about these logistics problems, right? Solving logistics optimization problems with quantum computers. So when I entered, the first thing I usually do that's the way how I work, is there was a story around, so okay, let's figure it out. So I wrote actually many logistics people on LinkedIn, not wanting to sell them something, but basically like, hey, like we have this use case. Can you explain me, like, is it a problem for you? Do you have this problem? Is it solved? What would be cool? What are things that you can't solve currently? And it basically turns out that they're all like less than impressed. They were all like, yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, it would be nice to do like a little bit more optimization. We have this Gurobi, it does its job quite well. Yeah, okay, sometimes it's maybe not as precise as we want it to be. So this is already, when you hear this, you can already like cross this out because nobody will pay money for this, right?
I think, Matthias, by the way, I think it's really cool that you proactively reached out on LinkedIn to test this case.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do. I mean this is important, right? Because you like the cut, and in the end, like I'm in business development. I want to sell stuff. So yes. And maybe some people out of academia look down sometimes on this because they think it's some kind of black magic or like lying to people or something like this. It's not. It's not. I try to figure out what is the problem of the person, and I try to find like a solution that fits that problem, that this person can do their job better. This is basically what business development and sales is. I try to understand like, okay, the person has like an unmet need or a want, like how with what I have in my hands currently, what products I can offer, I could help this person to solve the problem. This is basically what a good business development manager or sales manager should do, right? Not push product, but actually try to understand what are the needs and wants of the customer, and then meet these needs and wants, right? This is basically how that works. And this is complicated. And I think this is what you figure out when you hear all of these stories in the industry, is like you have to talk with the people in the industry, like that you want to apply that to. If you don't, you can spend years of telling at conferences the nice story about your route optimization algorithm. But if you go in the industry and they're all like, nice, cool, yeah, quantum, I've heard about it, sounds good. Come back when you have something interesting, right? Why you should even do it? Yes, academic interest, it's good. It's very good. I don't want to say, but it belongs in the university, right? If you want to do a research project, that's university. If you work in a company, you build a product, not a research project. So when you're a company, what you have to do is to talk with the customer. And this should be your only goal, is talk with the customer, figure out what the customer wants, and then figure out if you can actually deliver that. Because if not, you don't have to sell to every customer. Actually, you should not. You should figure out the customers where what you are building has the biggest impact, and where you can actually help most, and which is relevant to your technology that you try to develop. If you're trying to develop a technology, right? There are companies who just go from the problem side, which I think we are also more belonging to, like really try to solve a problem. I don't want to push quantum. I don't want to force people to use quantum. If I would find out that quantum 5 years from now is not the best way to solve the problem that we currently try to solve, no hard feelings. It is what it is, right? The customer is king. They need a solution that works. They get the best solution that works. I believe personally that this will not be the case, that what we are doing, actually the best solution for the customer in the future will be quantum. But like for me, they're fully on the application side. If something works and solve the problem, then, and it's the best way of solving the problem, whatever means best, right? It's also to be defined. But if it is the best way to solve the problem, so be it. I mean, it's fine. I like quantum computing. If it loses, it loses. I mean, it's how life is.